If you had told that young single mother from Raytown that one ordinary conversation would change the direction of her life, she would have laughed. She thought she was chasing one dream, but God was quietly leading her to another. Welcome to book two, Politics, Power, and the Woman I Was Becoming. This is my audiobook, A Journey from Jamaica to Becoming. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so now because we have such a story in store for you. Hang on tight and enjoy. Simply change your circumstances, they change who you become. At the time, I thought I was searching for a job. But looking back now, I can see that I was being introduced to my purpose. God was leading me quietly somewhere I never imagined. On my first morning at the law firm, I was shown to a desk, seated in front of a computer, handed a stack of papers, and told to enter the information. There was just one small problem. I had never touched a computer in my life. I stared at the screen, hoping it wasn't obvious that I hadn't the faintest idea of what I was doing. It would be much harder than an electronic typewriter, I quickly told myself. During my one semester at University of the West Indies, computers were already becoming more common on campus, but I avoided them completely. My comfort zone was the library, rows of books, encyclopedias, and handwritten notes. Those noisy machines with their bulky television like monitors and floppy disks fascinated everyone else. Not me. I happily wrote every assignment by hand. At home, we didn't own a television, much less a computer. My free time was spent borrowing books from Tom Redcom Library, participating in community social groups, or helping wherever I could. Technology simply wasn't part of my world. Now, somehow, I landed in a prestigious law firm where I was expected to know how to use one. By the end of the first day, I was convinced I wouldn't be invited back. The staff had been kind, the lawyers seemed genuinely pleasant, yet no one had explained my hours, my duties, or even what was expected of me. So when 4:30 p.m. arrived and everyone began packing their bags, I genuinely didn't know what I was supposed to do. Was I supposed to leave? Or should I spread my bed in a corner and prepare to spend the night? Honestly, I had no idea. Finally, someone simply said, "See you tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m., Anne Marie." I almost sighed with relief. My police fingerprint appointment had completely slipped my mind. Instead, my entire focus was shifting to learning enough about computers to survive another day at work. I hadn't even eaten lunch. It wasn't because I was hungry, I just simply couldn't afford it. Besides, anxiety had stolen whatever appetite I might have had. And every time Mr. Thwaites walked past my desk and asked, "Are you okay?" I was convinced the next word out of his mouth would be, "Show me what you've done." I imagine him discovering that I didn't know the first thing about operating a computer and politely sending me home before lunchtime. Throughout the day, I found comfort talking with one of my former schoolmates who also worked there. She became my safe place almost immediately. Mr. Thwaites' senior secretary, however, reminded me so much of my own mother that I behaved myself around her automatically. She had the kind of presence that made me feel she could march over and give me a good spanking if we stepped out of line. Whenever no one was paying attention, I quietly studied the other women in the office. Which keys were they pressing? How did they move the mouse? What happened after they clicked? They had no idea that they had become my teachers. Some still preferred using their electronic typewriters while others embraced the computer. Between the printers humming, keyboards clicking, and the occasional typewriter tapping away, the office was quiet, surprisingly quiet. When work ended, I decided to spend part of my little money I had traveling to Papine. The University of the West Indies hospital still felt like home. Many of my former colleagues were still there, and whenever my mother's diabetes became especially difficult, the pharmacy staff would quietly help me with insulin if they could. I never took advantage of their kindness. I only asked when I truly had no other option. That evening, though, I wasn't there because of my mother. I desperately needed someone to teach me how to use the computer before 8:30 a.m. the following morning. When I crossed East Queen Street, a parked Route 77 bus pulled up almost immediately. Like most buses in Kingston, it was packed tighter than a tin of sardines. By the time I reached the administrative department, people were already leaving the hospital for the evening. As I pushed open the doors, I bumped into a cashier I'd known earlier before I had been promoted to the accident and emergency department. She wasn't exactly known for doing favors. Still, I begged, I plead, and finally, she agreed. For 20 precious minutes, she showed me the absolute basics: how to turn the computer on, how to shut it down, how to save a document on a floppy disk, how to change the fonts, and that was it. I prayed it would be enough, and the journey home that evening felt even longer. Traveling from Papine back to Windward Road after dark was never for the faint hearted, and the buses seemed determined to stop for every waiting passenger on Mountain View Avenue. When I finally reached home and told Mommy everything that had happened, she burst into tears. She had never wanted me to join the Jamaica Constabulary Force. For months, she had tried to convince me to change my mind, and sometimes she reasoned with me, while other times she used fear, reminding me of police officers who had been shot and killed in the line of duty. She was growing weaker every day, and seeing her health decline only strengthened my determination to protect her family, whatever that meant. I hadn't told her about my fingerprint appointment because I didn't want her to worry even more. Besides, I still hadn't figured out who would care for her and my daughter once police training began in Twickenham Park. Now, almost overnight, everything seemed to be changing. She was overjoyed. I, on the other hand, felt overwhelmed. The police force, a law firm, mommy's health, my daughter, money, responsibility, it all seemed to be arriving at once. That night, I decided to stop trying to solve tomorrow's problems. I took a shower, climbed into bed, and waited to see what the next day would bring. That evening, as I lay in bed, another reality hit me. I didn't even have clothes for an office job. I hadn't planned for this opportunity because, truthfully, I never expected it to happen. Most of my clothes from the hospital was before my pregnancy, and motherhood had changed my bodies in ways I hadn't yet accepted. My hips were fuller, my waist softer, and not a single office outfit still fit me. Buying new clothes wasn't even a consideration. For the rest of the week, I decided I would simply wear the denim skirts and pants and blouse I had already honed. They weren't exactly law firm attire, but they were clean, respectable, and most importantly, they fit. And money was painfully tight, so I couldn't buy any extra clothes. I planned to walk to work each morning because I couldn't justify spending money on a bus fare unless I absolutely had to. Besides, it wasn't a difficult walk from Raytown to Duke Street. I asked my landlady if I could use her telephone to call my cousin because I had to tell her that I couldn't come into the shop tomorrow. I wanted her to know I'd finally found a job, and she was thrilled for me. Although she would miss having me nearby, she was genuinely happy that my life finally seemed to be moving forward. When I explained that I had no idea when I would receive my first paycheck, she quietly offered to lend me a little money and told me to stop by after work the next evening. My cousin was one of God's greatest blessings in my life. Even now, I struggle to imagine where I would be without her kindness. I decided that once I had a little money in my hand, I would buy two white blouses and one black skirt. They would become my office wardrobe. I'd wear them, wash them, then wear them again until I could afford something else. For now, they would simply have to wait, and I would wear what I currently have. Our cupboards at home weren't exactly full either, and I secretly hope I might leave my cousin's house that evening with a few groceries stuffed into my bag. The next morning, I walked into the office wearing one of my casual outfits. Almost immediately, I noticed the woman who appeared to be the office manager glance in my direction. My heart sunk. Please, God, I prayed silently. Don't let my clothes cost me this opportunity. She looked at me for a moment and then quietly walked into her office. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding in. That morning, I arrived much earlier than everyone else. Rather than sitting at my assigned desk where anyone could pass by and see what I was doing, I slipped into a smaller desk tucked away into a corner of the office. Then I switched on the computer. The familiar humming sound filled the room as it slowly booted up. For the first time in my life, I understood what that sound meant, and I smiled. For the next 30 minutes, I practiced typing one thing over and over again. My own name, Anne Marie, again and again, faster and faster, then faster still. I never saved the document. There was nothing on it worth saving. I was simply teaching myself not to be afraid, to be more fluent, to be able to type much faster. Soon, the kitchen staff began arriving for work. They greeted me warmly each morning, and their kindness helped settle my nerves. Then the front desk telephone rang. My heart nearly leapt out of his chest. Without thinking too much, I picked up the receiver and confidently repeated the greeting I'd heard everyone else use. When I hung up, I wanted to laugh. I was actually answering the telephone. It may sound like such a small thing now, but at that moment, I felt unstoppable. Me, Anne Marie from Raytown, working in a law firm. Can you imagine it? After months of walking beneath the scorching Jamaican sun looking for work, after countless interviews that led nowhere, after being dismissed, overlooked, and made to feel invisible, someone had finally given me a chance. It felt almost unreal. Then I gently remind myself this was only temporary. Still, temporary or not, I decided I was going to become the very best temporary employee that law firm had ever seen. Every morning, I practiced typing. I listened carefully to how everyone answered the telephone. I observed how they spoke with the clients. Even making tea became a lesson. One morning, I proudly volunteered to make Mr. Thwaites a cup of tea. His senior secretary took one look at it and exclaimed, "A sugar you want give?" She laughed as she pointed to the amount of sweetened condensed milk I'd poured into the cup. According to her, I was trying to give the poor man diabetes. I don't think I volunteered to make tea again for a long time. By lunchtime each day, the aroma drifting into the kitchen filled every corner of the office. It was impossible to ignore, yet I never joined everyone else in the lunchroom. No one had explained how lunch worked, and I simply assumed I couldn't afford it. Day after day, I quietly remained at my desk while everyone disappeared into the lunchroom. Sometimes I would go outside and walk around in downtown Kingston. Finally, near the end of the week, hunger won. Embarrassed, I asked one of the kitchen staff how much it would cost to purchase a lunch. She smiled, then explained that the meals were subsidized and I simply paid for them when I received my salary. I could hardly believe it. Once again, kindness found me before I even knew I needed it. My cousin also came to my rescue. She loaned me one of her skirts and top that she had worn to cosmetology school. They were a bit old, but I took them. Although my hips and curves filled them a little more generously than they filled hers, I finally had something that looked more appropriate for the office. The little money she lent me helped to keep food on the table until my first paycheck arrived. Even while settling into my new routine, the Jamaica Constabulary Force never completely left my thoughts. My fingerprint appointment still needed to be completed, but like many government offices in Jamaica, their operating hours mirrored my own work schedule. Each passing day made it more difficult. At the same time, another thought quietly crept into my mind. The data entry project couldn't last forever. Surely, once all of these documents had been entered into the computer, my temporary job would come to an end. That thought saddened me more than I care to admit. Before I knew it, 1 week became two, then three. And then payday arrived, girl. Holding that first salary in my hands filled me with pride I can still remember till today. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't simply surviving. I contributed. I paid my landlady, bought groceries, even treated myself to another blouse to rotate with the tiny office wardrobe I had. To anyone else, those purchases would have seemed ordinary. To me, they represented dignity. As the week passed, I found myself observing Mr. Thwaites more closely. He moved through the office with a quiet confidence that never demanded attention. His deep baritone voice carried authority, yet there was a warmth about him that immediately put people at ease. Whether he was speaking with a client, a secretary, the kitchen staff, or the cleaner, everyone received the same courtesy and respect. One afternoon, his daughter stopped by, and to my surprise, I recognized her immediately. She had been a sixth form prefect at my old high school, but I doubted she remembered me. We had never really known each other that much, but she carried herself with the same quiet confidence and genuine smile as her father. Watching them together stirred something inside me. I couldn't help wondering what it must feel like to have that kind of relationship with your father. It was something I'd never known myself. As I watched Mr. Thwaites interact with people each day, I couldn't help comparing him to the sitting member of parliament whose office I'd visited so many times, desperately hoping to help with my school fees and some sort of employment. The difference was striking. Mr. Thwaites never made people feel small. He never spoke down to anyone. Whether he was greeting a client in a suit or chatting with someone selling fruit on the roadside, he treated people with the same dignity. I watched him sit outside with the corner boys, sharing a meal and laughing with them as though they had known one another for years. And that amazed me. I'd never seen a man of that standing do something like that. The member of parliament, the sitting member of parliament, would never have done that. The difference between both men was so far in between. One demanded attention, the other earned respect. At the time, I simply admired the kind man Mr. Thwaites appeared to be, but looking back now, I realize he was teaching me something without ever saying a word. True leadership isn't about titles, influence, or making people feel beneath you. It's about making people feel seen. And he had mastered that art. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself thinking less and less about the police force. And that surprised me. Only weeks earlier, I had been convinced that becoming a police officer was my future. Now, without even realizing it, another life was quietly unfolding before me. And for the first time in a long time, my daughter's father was no longer constantly looking for me or stalking me. I wasn't walking the street every day searching for work. I wasn't laying awake each night wondering how I would buy food for my mommy or for my daughter. Little by little, I was beginning to breathe again. The salary from the law firm wasn't much, but it represented something far greater than money. It allowed me to contribute to the household, buy fresh food for mommy, purchase a few little outfits for my daughter, and perhaps most importantly, begin climbing out of the depression I'd been wading through for months. One of the things I loved most was simply listening. Around the office, conversations centered on current events, court cases, politics, and the day's headlines in the newspaper. Occasionally, one of the ladies would return from Coronation Market or a nearby wholesaler, proudly announcing the bargain she had found or complaining about how expensive things had become. I would quietly chuckle to myself because I knew exactly what that meant. Every Saturday morning at the market, I found myself saying the very same thing. Working at the university hospital had been a completely different experience. Thousands of people pass through the hospital doors every week, each carrying their own fears, frustration, and personalities, depending on their circumstances. Conversation could become tense in an instant. In the law firm, however, it felt remarkably calm. Even when people from my own community arrive hoping to see Mr. Thwaites, there always seems to be an unspoken sense of order. I watched him carefully. He rarely raised his voice, he didn't need to. His calm presence seemed to settle a room before he ever spoke. Whether he was speaking with lawyers, clients, office cleaners, or vendors outside the building, everyone received the same courtesy, and that amazed me. I'd never seen a man of his standing do something like that. As a child, I learned obedience. As a teenager, I learned silence. The overseer had taught me fear. My daughter's father had taught me self doubt. Before I even realized it, speaking up had been something I avoided whenever possible. The simple act of answering the office telephone became an unexpected victory. Each new responsibility quietly built a piece of the confidence I didn't have before. Little by little, the staff made me feel included, seen, valued. I was beginning to discover a version of myself I hadn't met before. Even so, whenever Mr. Thwaite spoke directly to me, I still became awkward. Words seemed to disappear from my vocabulary. He carried himself with such quiet authority that I often felt like shrinking into myself whenever he called my name. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't him I fear. It was authority itself. For so many years, authority had meant criticism, disappointment, or anger. I still hadn't learned the difference yet. By Christmas, I'd reached another small milestone. I taught myself to design simple flyers on the computer. The law firm also handled real estate transaction, and whenever flyers needed to be printed for the Montego Bay office, I studied every detail. Then I came in early each morning and secretly practiced creating my own versions. No one knew. Well, almost no one. Occasionally, the owner of the computer I had quietly borrowed would arrive to find me sitting in her chair and gently remind me that it was, in fact, her desk and not mine. I would apologize sheepishly and hurry back to my own desk. Still, I couldn't help feeling proud. Every new skill felt like another door opening. If only I had enough money to return to school. Ah, just imagine what I might be capable of. One morning, while answering the switchboard, I decided to add a little Christmas cheer to the usual greetings. And this, I said, season's greetings from the management and staff of. I smiled proudly. If mommy could hear me now, she would be so proud. Then came the voice on the other end. Who is this? This is Ronald Thwaites. My entire body froze. I wanted to disappear. Mr. Thwaites seldom called through the switchboard, and the regular receptionist hadn't arrived yet. I'd assume it was another wrong number, which wasn't unusual that early in the morning. Instead of being annoyed, however, he sounded amused. He and the other lawyers later told me how much they enjoyed my festive greetings because they also was able to hear when I answered the phone. Anyway, that bolstered my courage to answer the switchboard more often. Around the same time, the staff discovered that I could design simple flyers. Soon, I was being asked to prepare them whenever they needed them. Then, the senior secretary began teaching me proper typing techniques. Can you imagine it? Letters that once took me forever suddenly became easier to produce. Everyone, from the lawyers to the support staff, seemed willing to invest a little time in helping me grow. Now I was understanding the legal side of things in the law firm. They never knew it. But over those months, something remarkable was happening. Every encouraging word, every patient correction, every new responsibility, every opportunity to learn. They were quietly building the confidence of a little girl from Raytown, one brick at a time. Few months later, everything changed. Mr. Thwaites was officially selected to represent his party in the upcoming 1997 general elections. He was to represent my community of Central Kingston. The morning after the announcement, I arrived at the office expecting an ordinary day. As usual, I came in early. What I wasn't expecting was to find Mr. Thwaites already there. Normally, he arrived later after finishing his morning radio program. That morning, his voice echoed through the otherwise silent office as he laughed while speaking on the telephone. I stopped in my tracks. For a brief moment, another office, another politician, another invitation flashed across my mind. I'd reminded myself that not every man carried the same intentions. If anyone had consistently treated me with kindness and professionalism, it was Mr. Thwaites. Quietly, I slipped towards my desk. Good morning, sir, I mumbled with a nervous wave. He smiled, waved back, and motioned for me to come into his office. My stomach immediately tightened. Somehow, I'd grown so accustomed to bad news that I automatically assumed this conversation couldn't possibly end well. As I sat down, he smiled. I'm not going to bite you, Miss Anne Marie. The laughter dancing in his eyes made me realize how transparent my fear must have been. Are you planning to go back to school? He asked. For a brief moment, I almost told him everything about university, about the promises, about that night, about why I never returned. But years of disappointment are not dismantled in a single conversation. So instead, I quietly answered, that has always been my plan, sir. Well, get yourself registered, he replied warmly. If you need help, come and speak with me. I searched his face. There was no hidden conditions, no vague promises, no manipulation, just a simple offer to help. It felt almost impossible to believe. The wall of mistrust I'd built around politicians had been carefully constructed over many painful years. It wouldn't crumble in a single morning. Okay, sir, I answered softly. Then he continued. I'm thinking of moving the political side of my office to the constituency office at National US Circle. The law practice needs to remain separate. I'd like you to come with me one morning and have a look around. I think you might enjoy working there. I stared at him, completely speechless. You should close your mouth before a fly takes up residence in there, Miss Anne. Ha ha, he laughed. You don't have to answer me today. Just come and see the office first. Was he really inviting me to become his assistant? Wait a minute. Had he just offered to help me return to university? Surely I'd misunderstood. Then he smiled. Can I ask you a favor, Miss Anne Marie? Miss Anne Marie? I thought. I hadn't been addressed with such respect in a long time. Yes, Mr. Thwaites, you can. Would you please make me a cup of tea? My God, I thought. I practically ran to the kitchen. He must have known. He must have known I needed a few minutes to gather myself. This is too much. Is this man mad? I thought as I prepared the tea. I was only just learning how to type, make flyers, getting myself around the office, only just beginning to understand legal correspondence. I never even attended secretarial college. I was simply a young woman from Raytown whose confidence had been chipped away by disappointment, betrayal, and fear. Yet, no one in that office treated me as though those things defined me. Tears began finding their way down my cheek, and I quickly washed my face before anyone could notice. By the time I carried the tea back to his office, my face was clear and I had regrouped myself. Here is your tea, sir. He took one sip, scrunched up his face dramatically, looked into the cup, and laughed. I certainly hope your tea making skills improve if you decide to come and work with me. Then he burst into the kind of deep, infectious laugh that came from somewhere near his diaphragm. This time, I laughed too. As I walked out of his office that morning, I couldn't possibly have known that another door has just opened. I'd walk into that law firm looking for a temporary job. Instead, I'd found a mentor, a second chance, and the quiet beginning of a woman I was still becoming. Sometimes, the door you think leads to a job is actually the door leading to your own purpose. Thank you for sticking around to the end of the first chapter of book 2 of my book, A Journey from Jamaica to Becoming. If you haven't done so yet, please remember to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so you're notified when a new chapter lands or a new video is uploaded. Please remember to give me a thumbs up to help me go into the algorithm and leave a comment. Share it with your friends so that they too can enjoy this audiobook. Again, I just want to say thank you from Blooms and Stitches. Until I see you in the next one. Have a great day.